the city, 70 reported by Dodge City and Liberal, 72 over by the good folks.
Hello and welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of Cultural Osmosis. This episode, I am joined by my wonderful John.
Landon.
John, welcome back.
Oh, hey, Landon.
I feel like we just talked the other day.
You're looking real familiar, and that's because we talked the other day.
That's true. We didn't get a chance last episode, but John actually has his own podcast, the Good Comedy Podcast, which you might have heard of, and if you haven't, then shame on you. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that is really fast?
Yeah. Hey, guys. So the Good Comedy Podcast, part of the Good Comedy YouTube channel that I co-host with my buddy Colin. Our buddy Colin. If you like comedy, if you like good things,
yeah.
If you like good comedy, that's a good distinction. If you like skits, YouTube, boys, and anything and everything surrounding those things, maybe check us out.
If you specifically like boys, check it out. There's a it's got that for sure.
Everyone else is welcome too.
We're not taking anybody out. It just happens to have boys.
There's a lot of boys there too. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So yeah, check that out. So John, nice to see you again. We now I remember you hosted a film festival that was all the films I believe that were influential in your life, and one of them was a film that we'll be talking about today, and that is the Hobbit. Now I know what you're thinking out there, audience. It's not the Peter Jackson Hobbit. It is the 1977 animated classic. Animated version of The Hobbit, and also we'll be talking a little bit about the 1978 Lord of the Rings animated adaptation. So, John, you want to talk a little bit about why that film is so influential to you?
Yes. Unfortunately, Landon, I am one of those stinkers that I never speak of the Peter Jackson Hobbit series, mainly because there's no reason there's 3 of them, and I think they really dropped the ball on using too much CG and stuff.
One could argue that there's a lot of computer animation in the 77 version of The Hobbit as well, but
that's true, Landon, but there's a little bit of a difference. It's one movie. It's confined into one movie for one book, which is decent, a good start.
Mm-hmm.
The Hobbit, 1977. I remember watching this film as a child and just being blown away by how detailed it was. For those of you who aren't familiar with like 1970s animation style, they're very particular with fingers, and you can really see like an excessive amount of detail in the hands of these characters in this series. And you'll see in like the credits, if you watch it, like they got a lot of like Japanese animators to help with this project. And the creators of this film, Rankin and Bass, it was co-directed. I guess in my research, their studio production company was like a precursor to Studio Ghibli. So
wow.
yeah, big stuff. But yeah, it's just a sweet story with amazing music. They got shoot, I looked his name up, but they get this guy to do the intro song with just the greatest vibrato you've ever heard. You'll hear this guy sing one note and your panties will melt if you If you mind my French, don't mind my French.
Pause this podcast right now and go listen to it. If you haven't, we'll wait for you. So, yeah. Now we got to get this out of the way as a disclaimer. Now, have you read the book, John?
I've read the book. I've
Okay.
read the books. Yes.
All 3 Hobbit books? You've read all 3 Hobbit books?
I've read all 3 Hobbit books and the one Lord of the Ring.
Yes, that's how it is. There's an interesting, more I guess with Lord of the Rings. It's a pros and cons kind of thing with timing and the amount of time one has to tell its narrative and flesh out its characters. Obviously, there's only one singular animated Lord of the Rings movie versus 3. There's 2?
There's one Lord of the Rings movie directed by Ralph Bakshi.
Yeah.
And there's another film by Rankin and Bass that then completes the story with Return of the King. And that one's very difficult to find.
Have you seen it though?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's
got that bootleg.
It's difficult to find, and there's a reason for that, because it's just not too good. But we can get into that later.
Do you think the medium of animation is better for the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit universe as a mode for telling the story? Because before even the animated films come out, people deemed the books as unfilmable. They were listed as one of the unfilmable books. Do you think the animation speaks to that a little bit, or it's just a tool? Or
I think they were definitely on the right track when they went with animation initially. There was like lots of talk about, maybe the Beatles would produce a Lord of the Rings series, and then we've got Rankin and Bass. And then the king of rotoscope, Ralph Bakshi, back in the day, he did the Fellowship and the Two Towers into one film. So they were definitely on the right track, and I think it definitely lends itself to bringing the audience to kind of this fantastical world. Like the orcs have 2 throats, and you can see down both of them, and that's just such a great image. And I think they were on the right track there. Thankfully. Not all CGI is bad, and they managed to make a killer trilogy of the Lord of the Rings with Peter Jackson, and a lot of that was influenced by the failures of these animated films. You'll watch them and you'll see a lot of just the shots used, and the line delivery sometimes is very similar to what we see with Peter Jackson's films.
Speaking of rotoscoping, it's a very trippy effect. For those who are not aware, rotoscoping is a method used for doing animation more quickly. It's drawing on top of live action footage, and it's very noticeable in some points. Like the orcs are pretty much fully live action in some parts, and it's kind of trippy to watch. It's a mixed media piece, I would say. It's very interesting. Do you have anything to say about that? Because
absolutely,
you must defend it passionately.
So the Lord of the Rings, directed by Ralph Bakshi, who also did Wizards and like pretty much brought animation and cartoons to the adult audience for everyone.
Fritz the Cat too.
Fritz the Cat, he was a big influence there. The Lord of the Rings was the first fully rotoscoped film in history, I believe, and the only character that was not rotoscoped was Treebeard in the entire series movie. Excuse me. But yeah, I think there are some elements where the rotoscoping is mainly just making the live action characters into silhouettes, You'll see that with like the orcs and the wide battle shots, and the Nazgul, the Black Riders. You'll see them just kind of like, you'll notice it's the humans, and they just kind of silhouetted them, gave them red eyes, and made them spooky. But it worked so well. I think the Nazgul are maybe some of the scariest adaptations of the Nazgul I've ever seen.
They're so creepy, and the performances as well. They're just so eerie.
Yeah,
but they're also cool.
They're so cool, and it's so funny too. Though while you watch it, you can definitely tell the actors might not have known what exactly this movie is going to look like, so they really just like over animated their actions, and they're like pulling their hair out when they're scared, and they're like waving their hands all over the place. Gandalf is amazing with his like finger acting and stuff.
That's rotoscoping for you.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm a sucker for rotoscope. A lot of people think it's too smooth of an animation style, but
I love rotoscope. Like,
I love it.
Like heavy metal, like it looks, it's cool.
Oh yeah.
So take that, audience.
Hey, yeah, you're wrong, audience.
All 10,000 viewers, I'm sure. I want to do a little bit of pros, cons. Obviously, it's impossible to talk about like one without talking about the remake. So a little bit of pros, cons in terms of characters in the 70s movies versus the Peter Jackson movies. Now, there any characters that you think from the animated movies are done better? Obviously, you said Gandalf has his finger acting. But does Peter Jackson do anything better? Obviously, it's hard because he has more time to breathe. But what I'm curious on your thoughts on that subject.
Sure. Well, speaking for the Lord of the Rings series, not the Hobbit, the live action version just nailed it with the casting, nailed it with cinematography and all that. And while the cinematography does have its thanks to give to the animated series, the cast and the performances were just like spot on. You can't really top that too much. For the Hobbit series, I can see why they wanted to expand it. Like in the book and the animated version of it, you really only follow Bilbo, but you have these 13 other characters. What are you supposed to do with those? Like, the modern audience wants to like get to know them, otherwise they're wasting space in the screen. You know? Right. So I feel like that ambition there to expand on a child's story that focuses on one character amongst many was maybe the falling or the failing aspect of the Hobbit live action version. Yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Interesting thoughts. The main thing I just haven't, John Hurt as Aragorn obviously is
yes.
some powerful casting.
Absolutely.
If nobody else is a competitor for possibly being better, definitely John Hurt, but he's great in everything.
John Huston also as Gandalf in The Hobbit, and then he returns for Return of the King animated film. John Huston, who directed Maltese Falcon, is like an absolute icon. Yeah,
like he was in an Orson Welles movie too, but possibly.
Yeah, his posthumous one that's on Netflix. He was
the other side of the wind. Yeah. That's Gandalf, everybody. So like,
that's Gandalf.
go check it out.
I'm a big fan of John Huston. He's so amazing.
Just because of his Gandalf performance, or just as a whole?
Well, but just his life story is crazy. I could talk an entire episode about that.
John Huston is cool, and his son's also in the industry. So, just a fun fact for you out there. So, the answer is pretty obvious, but it's more. do you think the live action is superior because it has time to breathe, or do you think the animation is superior because it trims the fat and it's just straight into the story? It's the important talking points. What do you think are some of the draws to the animation adaptations as a whole versus that?
Yeah. I guess just short answer, live action version of Lord of the Rings is better. I from my research, when Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings came out, a lot of people were upset that it only covered the first two films. They were kind of mad they didn't finish the story, and just in general, were kind of put off by it. And then when Rankin and Bass, who did the animated Hobbit, came back to complete the trilogy with Return of the King, they had to recap so many things with a lot of vibrato songs and just rushed right through it. And they didn't even bring in Legolas and Gimli. They never make an appearance.
Oh,
Audiences were just very upset with that one too, and agreed that Ralph Bakshi's was a much more mature and fleshed out adaptation. So yeah, there are limitations with the animated series that the live action series definitely benefited from, because they could look back and see what failed for them and how do we fix that and not make the same mistakes. So I guess final answer, live action is better, but they definitely had a ladder, a step stool, because of the animated series. Yeah,
I would agree. But it's almost, would you say, the reverse for The Hobbit? Because The Hobbit is more in line. It's one movie, 1-to-1 with one book. A lot of the live action Hobbit movies, there's just so much added fluff. We don't speak of that one, but
I imagine, like, even beyond the studio's expectation to make so much money off of these films, I imagine that, like, we already made this epic trilogy. How do we then come back to this one film that and like live up to those standards? And I think they bit off a little too much.
It's so, if you take away anything, it's live action Hobbit, or sorry, not that. It's animated Hobbit, and then your choice for Lord of the Rings.
Add the animated Hobbit film to your Lord of the Rings list next year.
Add it to the binge. Make it the new canon. Can we hashtag it's the new canon out there?
New canon.
Can we get I have a description here for a movie from 1977. So obviously this movie we're talking, it's a young person being taken from their home to aid a group of ragtag and colorful characters on a quest to help against an evil force. Is The Hobbit A New Hope, or
Oh, interesting.
Both came out in 1977, and both boiled down are the exact same plot. So that's all I'm saying out there.
Or is it Pitch Black from the Chronicles of Riddick series?
Oh my god, I can't believe you referenced that episode from months ago.
No, yeah, that makes total sense, especially with I think Mark Hamill was in a previous Ralph Bakshi film, Wizards, and then later went on to star in Star Wars. So there's a little bit of a connection there too. Lord of the Rings. But yeah, I know George Lucas definitely set out to make us a space fairy tale. So that makes perfect sense.
I'm just saying the iceberg goes deeper than one thinks. This is all I'm saying. But
absolutely.
There you go. John, is there anything pressing or from your research or huge talking points that we forgot to mention that you'd like to bring up now?
a lot of the fun facts about these animated movies is just the connections with actors involved in them being connected with other series. So I'm going to leave that up to the audience to look up. There's some connections to Alien a little bit because Bilbo was an alien and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I'd watch them just if you're a big Lord of the Rings fan. It's good education for the development of of the visual storytelling of the series. But if you just want one recommendation from the three, watch The Hobbit and stick to the Lord of the Rings live action.